When a fearless Blackfeet war chief returns home early, nothing could prepare him for the chilling silence that greets him. The camp is deserted, and his warrior wife is gone. What happened in his absence? Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you liked the story, and where you're watching from and why you're following this. The harsh Montana winter was beginning to release its grip on the land as Chief Running Wolf guided his horse over the final ridge before the Blackfeet camp. The journey had been long, 3 days of hard riding after separating from the hunting party to scout ahead. His muscles ached with fatigue, but anticipation quickened his heart. It had been 2 moons since he had seen his wife Nightstorm, the fiercest woman warrior the tribe had known in generations. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the valley where the camp should have been bustling with activity. Running Wolf pulled his horse to a sudden stop, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the familiar location. Something was wrong. The usual smoke from cooking fires was absent. No children ran between the teepees. No dogs barked at his approach. "Where is everyone?" he whispered, his breath forming small clouds in the cool spring air. His horse snorted nervously beneath him, sensing its rider's sudden tension. Running Wolf urged his mount forward, approaching cautiously. As he entered what should have been the outer perimeter of the camp, the devastating truth became clear. The camp was abandoned, not just temporarily vacated but hastily deserted. Several teepees remained standing, their buffalo hide coverings flapping in the wind. Others had been partially dismantled or collapsed. Personal belongings were scattered about, something that would never happen in a planned migration. "Nightstorm!" he called out, his deep voice echoing across the empty valley. Only silence answered him. Running Wolf dismounted, his hand instinctively moving to the knife at his belt. His eyes scanned the ground, reading the story written in the trampled earth. Many feet had moved quickly. There were no signs of blood or struggle, but the panic was evident in the chaotic pattern of footprints. At the center of the camp, where the council fire should have been burning, Running Wolf found a single eagle feather, Nightstorm's token, one she had worn braided into her hair since earning her place among the warriors. He picked it up carefully, running his fingers along its length. "I will find you," he promised, securing the feather in his own hair. As daylight began to fade, Running Wolf methodically searched the abandoned camp, looking for any clue that might tell him what had happened. In the teepee he had shared with Nightstorm, he found their sleeping robes hastily pushed aside. Her favorite bow was missing, but her ceremonial dress still hung from one of the lodge poles. Whatever had happened, it had come suddenly. Outside again, Running Wolf studied the most prominent trail leading away from the camp. The tracks were several days old now, perhaps a week, but still readable to his experienced eyes. Many people, most of the tribe by the look of it, had headed north toward the territory of their traditional enemies, the Crow. "Why would our people go toward Crow lands?" he murmured, puzzled by this dangerous choice. As darkness fell, Running Wolf built a small fire near the remains of what had been the chief's lodge. He was not yet chief. His father, Gray Bear, still held that honor, but Running Wolf had been chosen as war chief 3 winters ago, after leading a successful raid against Crow horse thieves. "Father, where have you taken our people?" he asked the flames. "And why did Nightstorm go with you instead of waiting for my return as we had planned?" The fire crackled and popped, offering no answers. Running Wolf closed his eyes, remembering the last time he had seen his wife. They had stood on this very spot, her dark eyes reflecting the morning light as she pressed her forehead against his. "Return swiftly," she had whispered. "I have something important to tell you when you come back." What had she wanted to tell him? And now, where was she? Sleep came fitfully that night, haunted by dreams of Nightstorm calling his name from somewhere he couldn't reach. By first light, Running Wolf had made his decision. He would follow the trail north. If his people had been forced to flee, they would need him. If they had gone willingly, he needed to understand why. As he prepared to leave, a movement at the edge of the abandoned camp caught his eye. A figure on horseback watched him from the distance. Running Wolf grabbed his bow, nocking an arrow with practiced speed. "Show yourself," he commanded, his voice carrying across the open space. The rider approached slowly, hands raised in the gesture of peace. As the figure drew closer, Running Wolf recognized the face of Jumping Badger, one of the young warriors who had accompanied him on the hunting expedition. but had separated from the group 2 days earlier to check on his family in a smaller camp to the east. "Chief Running Wolf!" Jumping Badger called out, his voice strained with urgency. "I have been searching for you. There is much you need to know." Running Wolf lowered his bow but kept the arrow loosely nocked. Even with a familiar face, caution was necessary in these uncertain circumstances. Jumping Badger dismounted, his young face drawn with exhaustion and worry. "Speak," Running Wolf commanded. "What has happened to our people? Where is Nightstorm?" Jumping Badger took a deep breath, glancing around at the abandoned camp. Sickness came to the camp, Chief, a terrible fever that struck quickly. First the children, then the elders. Many died in just a few days. Running Wolf felt his heart constrict. "And Nightstorm?" "She lives," Jumping Badger said quickly, seeing the fear in his leader's eyes. "But she led the care for the sick. When your father decided the tribe must move away from this place of death, she insisted on staying behind with those too ill to travel. They established a smaller camp near the healing springs to the north." Relief washed over Running Wolf, followed immediately by fresh concern. "How many stayed with her?" "7, including your sister Little Fox and the medicine man Old Crow. Nightstorm sent me to find you when I arrived at the healing springs yesterday. She said you would come here first." Running Wolf nodded, his mind already calculating the fastest route to the springs. "And the rest of the tribe? Where did my father take them?" "To the summer hunting grounds near the big river. They left markers for those who recover to follow." Jumping Badger paused, his expression growing more troubled. "But there is more, Chief. 2 days ago, a band of Crow warriors was seen near the healing springs. They seemed to be tracking something, or someone." Running Wolf's jaw tightened. The Crow and Blackfeet had been enemies for generations, with only occasional periods of uneasy peace. If Crow warriors were in the area while his people were weakened by sickness and divided. "We ride now," he decided, already moving to gather his few belongings. "How far are the healing springs?" "Half a day's ride if we push hard," Jumping Badger replied, remounting his horse. As they rode north, Jumping Badger shared more details of the sickness that had struck the camp. It had begun nearly 2 weeks ago, with high fevers and painful breathing. The medicine man's traditional remedies had helped some, but many of the youngest and oldest had not survived. "Nightstorm never fell ill?" Running Wolf asked as they forded a shallow stream. "No, Chief. She seemed protected somehow. She worked tirelessly, moving between the sick, bringing water, applying medicine. Some whispered that the spirits had blessed her." Running Wolf nodded, pride mingling with his concern. This was the woman he had chosen, fearless in battle and selfless in times of trouble. What was the important news she had wanted to tell him? He urged his horse to greater speed. By midday, they approached a series of low hills that concealed the healing springs. Steam rose from the natural hot pools that had been sacred to the Blackfeet for countless generations. The spring's mineral waters were known to ease many ailments. As they crested the final hill, Running Wolf raised his hand, signaling Jumping Badger to stop. Below them, where a small camp of 7 people should have been, there was nothing but trampled grass and scattered belongings. "No," he whispered, scanning the area desperately for any sign of life. They approached cautiously, weapons ready. The scene told a clear story to Running Wolf's experienced eyes. There had been a struggle. A cooking fire had been kicked over, its contents spilled across the ground. A buffalo robe lay half in one of the springs, something no Blackfeet would ever do intentionally with such a valuable item. "Crow," Jumping Badger said grimly, pointing to a distinctive arrowhead embedded in a nearby tree trunk. Running Wolf knelt to examine the ground, reading the signs of what had happened. 3, maybe 4 warriors, he determined. They came from the west, surprised the camp. He moved systematically around the area, his heart pounding with fear for Nightstorm and the others. Near the largest spring, he found what he was looking for, and dreading. Signs of resistance. Nightstorm had fought back. He recognized the marks her distinctive moccasins made in the soft earth. 2 sets of drag marks led away from the camp, heading west. "They took prisoners," he said, his voice deadly calm despite the rage building inside him. Jumping Badger looked pale. "All of them?" Running Wolf continued his examination of the area, finding more signs. "No, some fled east toward the summer camp. 3 sets of footprints moving quickly. But Nightstorm," he pointed to one set of drag marks. "She was taken." "Along with who else?" I cannot tell for certain. One other person. Perhaps Old Crow or my sister. Running Wolf stood, his decision already made. You will follow those who fled east. Ensure they reach my father safely. Tell him what has happened here, but do not allow him to send warriors after me. I will track the crow myself. Alone? Jumping Badger questioned, concern evident in his voice. Chief, that is too dangerous. Let me come with you. Running Wolf shook his head firmly. The survivors need protection. This is my path to walk. He placed a hand on the younger warrior's shoulder. I trust you with this important task. Reluctantly, Jumping Badger nodded. I will do as you ask. May the spirits guide your steps, Chief. And yours, Running Wolf replied, already gathering what supplies he could salvage from the abandoned camp. As Jumping Badger departed eastward, Running Wolf prepared himself for the pursuit. Nightstorm was alive. He felt this truth in his bones. And he would find her, no matter how far he had to travel or what enemies stood in his way. Before leaving, he knelt beside the largest healing spring, dipping his fingers into the warm, mineral-rich water. He drew symbols on his face, ancient markings of the Blackfeet war chief on the hunt. Then he whispered a prayer to the spirits of his ancestors, asking for their guidance and protection. I am coming, Nightstorm, he vowed as he mounted his horse and turned west, following the trail of those who had taken his beloved warrior wife. The western trail grew steeper as Running Wolf followed the Crow war party into unfamiliar territory. The kidnappers had a 2-day head start, but they were burdened with prisoners and moving cautiously to avoid detection. Running Wolf traveled light and fast, his years of experience as a scout allowing him to read the subtlest signs on the landscape: a broken twig, disturbed stones, the occasional trace of a moccasin print where the ground was soft. By nightfall, he had reached a narrow canyon where the Crow party had clearly made camp the previous night. The remains of their small fire still held warmth when he dug beneath the ashes. They were moving slower than he had initially thought. Running Wolf chose not to light a fire of his own, instead chewing on dried buffalo meat as he studied the area in the fading light. Near where the prisoners had been kept, evidenced by scuff marks where someone had sat with their back against a boulder, he found what he had been hoping for: a small bead from Nightstorm's ceremonial belt, deliberately dropped as a marker. Clever woman, he whispered, a grim smile touching his lips. Nightstorm was leaving him a trail within a trail. He slept fitfully, waking at the slightest sound, his hand always on his knife. When the first light of dawn broke over the canyon walls, he was already moving, following the trail westward through increasingly rocky terrain. By midday, he spotted smoke rising from a distant copse of trees along a small creek. Running Wolf left his horse secured in a hidden draw and proceeded on foot, moving silently from cover to cover until he could observe the Crow camp without being detected. What he saw made his blood run cold. 4 Crow warriors sat around a small fire, passing a pipe between them. Tied to a tree at the edge of the camp was an older man that Running Wolf recognized immediately as Old Crow, the medicine man. The elderly healer appeared weak but alive, his head hanging forward as if in exhaustion or pain. But Nightstorm was nowhere to be seen. Running Wolf circled the perimeter of the camp with painstaking slowness, searching for any sign of his wife. Had they separated their prisoners? Was she being held elsewhere? Or had something worse happened? As he completed his circuit, a flash of movement caught his eye from a secluded spot near the creek. There, partially hidden behind a large boulder, he finally saw her. Nightstorm was kneeling by the water, her hands bound in front of her, closely watched by a 5th Crow warrior who stood guard over her. Relief flooded through Running Wolf at the sight of her alive, followed immediately by calculating rage as he noted the bruises on her face and arms. She had not been taken without a fight, and it appeared her resistance had continued after capture. Nightstorm dipped her bound hands into the creek, splashing water on her face. As she did so, her eyes scanned the surrounding trees with deliberate care. She was looking for signs of pursuit, Running Wolf realized. Looking for him. For a moment their eyes met across the distance, and though she gave no outward reaction, Running Wolf saw the recognition flash in her gaze. She knew he was there. The guard barked something at her in the Crow language, gesturing for her to return to the main camp. Nightstorm rose slowly, her movements stiff. As she turned, Running Wolf noticed something that made his heart skip a beat. the slight but unmistakable roundness of her belly beneath her deerskin dress. The important news she had wanted to tell him upon his return. Nightstorm was carrying their child. Running Wolf's fists clenched as he watched his pregnant wife being led back to the camp. This changed everything. A direct attack against 5 warriors was risky enough when trying to free 2 prisoners, but with Nightstorm carrying their child, the danger was magnified tenfold. He retreated into the forest to form a new plan. Patience would be required. Patience and cunning. He would watch and wait for the perfect moment to strike. As darkness fell, Running Wolf observed the crow camp from his hidden position. The warriors took turns standing guard, 2 sleeping while 3 remained awake. Old Crow had been given water but little food. Nightstorm received slightly better treatment, though her hands remained bound. When the moon reached its highest point, Running Wolf saw his opportunity. The guard nearest to where the prisoners were kept had nodded off, his chin dropping to his chest. The other 2 awake warriors were engaged in a quiet conversation on the opposite side of the fire. With the silence of a hunting cougar, Running Wolf crept toward the sleeping guard. His knife found its mark with deadly precision. One hand clamped over the warrior's mouth to silence any sound. Lowering the body gently to the ground, he moved toward the prisoners. Old Crow saw him first, the elderly man's eyes widening in recognition. Running Wolf pressed a finger to his lips as he cut the medicine man's bonds. "Can you walk?" he whispered. Old Crow nodded, rubbing his wrists. Slowly, but yes. Running Wolf moved to Nightstorm next, his heart pounding as he sliced through the rawhide binding her hands. The moment she was free, she grabbed his arm, her grip strong despite her ordeal. "The others?" she whispered. "Jumping badgers leading them to the summer camp," he replied quietly, helping her to her feet. "We must move now while we can." Nightstorm nodded, but as they began to retreat into the shadows, a shout rang out from across the camp. One of the warriors had spotted them. The element of surprise was lost. "Run!" Running Wolf commanded, pushing Old Crow and Nightstorm toward the trees while he turned to face the approaching threat. The first warrior reached him with a war cry, swinging a stone club in a deadly arc. Running Wolf ducked beneath the blow, driving his knife upward. The warrior fell, but the others were already closing in. Nightstorm had not fled as instructed. Instead, she had grabbed a fallen branch and now stood at Running Wolf's side, her stance wide and balanced despite her condition. "I told you to run," he growled, blocking another attacker's thrust. "I am a warrior of the Blackfeet," she replied simply, swinging her makeshift weapon with enough force to stagger the approaching crow fighter. Together they fought with the coordination of those who had trained and battled side by side for years. Old Crow had disappeared into the forest. Good, Running Wolf thought. At least the elderly healer might survive to reach safety. The fight was brutal but brief. Running Wolf's surprise attack had eliminated 1 warrior before the alarm was raised, and another fell quickly to his knife once the battle was joined. Nightstorm, despite her pregnancy and recent captivity, fought with remarkable effectiveness, disabling 1 attacker with a powerful blow to the knee. The final warrior, seeing his companions defeated, turned to flee into the darkness. Running Wolf prepared to pursue. No witnesses could be left to bring reinforcements, but Nightstorm's hand on his arm stopped him. "Let him go," she said, her breathing heavy from exertion. "We must leave this place quickly. There are more crow in these hills." Running Wolf hesitated, torn between the tactical necessity of silencing the escaped warrior and the urgent need to get Nightstorm to safety. "The tribe is in danger," she continued, reading his thoughts as she so often could. "What I learned during my captivity? We must warn your father." This new information decided him. Running Wolf nodded, retrieving what supplies he could from the crow camp before leading Nightstorm into the forest where he had hidden his horse. "Can you ride?" he asked, eyeing her condition with concern. Nightstorm gave him a look that combined exasperation with affection. "I carried our child while leading the care for the sick, staying behind when the tribe fled, and fighting crow warriors after 2 days as their prisoner. Yes, my husband, I can ride." For the first time since discovering the abandoned camp, Running Wolf felt a smile touch his lips. This was why he had chosen her as his wife. Her spirit was as untamable as the wind itself. "Then we ride east," he said, helping her onto his horse before mounting behind her. "And you will tell me everything." The eastern sky was beginning to lighten with the first hints of dawn, As Running Wolf and Nightstorm made their way through a dense forest, having ridden through most of the night, they had found Old Crow waiting for them several miles from the Crow camp, the elderly medicine man having hidden himself in a hollow beneath a fallen tree. Now, with Old Crow riding double with Nightstorm on Running Wolf's sturdy horse, they paused at a small stream to rest and drink. Running Wolf helped Nightstorm dismount, his hands lingering protectively near her waist. "You should have told me about the child before I left for the hunt," he said quietly, as Old Crow moved upstream to gather some medicinal plants he had spotted. Nightstorm dipped her cupped hands into the clear water, drinking deeply before responding. "I wanted to be certain," she said, straightening to meet his gaze. "And I wanted to tell you when we could celebrate together, not as you were leaving with the hunting party." Running Wolf placed his palm gently against her rounded belly. "How long?" "The child will come with the autumn moon," she replied, placing her hand over his. "Old Crow says it will be a boy." A complex mixture of emotions crossed Running Wolf's face: joy, pride, and deep concern. "All the more reason we must reach the summer camp quickly. You need rest, proper food." Nightstorm shook her head firmly. "What I need is for you to listen. The Crow warriors were not random raiders. They were sent specifically to find me, or rather, to find any pregnant women among our people." Running Wolf's expression darkened. "Why would they target expectant mothers?" "Because of the prophecy," Old Crow said, returning to join their conversation. The medicine man looked exhausted, the ordeal of captivity evident in his sunken eyes, but his voice remained steady. "The Crow's most powerful medicine man has had a vision that a child born to the Blackfeet this year will grow to become a great chief, who will unite many tribes and drive the white settlers from our lands." Running Wolf frowned. "And they believe this child is mine?" "They believe it could be any Blackfeet child born this season," Nightstorm explained. "They took us to learn where the tribe had gone, intending to capture all expectant mothers." "Did you tell them?" Running Wolf asked, though he already knew the answer. Nightstorm's eyes flashed. "I told them nothing but insults in their own tongue. But they are determined hunters. If that lone warrior returns to his people, they will send more," Running Wolf finished grimly. "Many more." Old Crow nodded, his weathered hands working to create a poultice from the plants he had gathered. "The Crow fear this prophecy because it speaks of a leader who will unite all the peoples of the plains, including them. They would rather kill every Blackfeet child born this year than risk losing their independence." Running Wolf's jaw tightened. "Then we must reach my father and the tribe before they do. We will need every warrior to protect our people." They rested only long enough for Old Crow to treat Nightstorm's bruises with his medicine, then continued eastward with renewed urgency. The summer hunting grounds were still at least 2 days' journey away, even pushing their tired horse to its limits. As they traveled, Nightstorm recounted what else she had learned during her captivity. "The sickness that struck our camp was not natural," she revealed. "The Crow medicine man sent diseased blankets as a gift through a trader, hoping to weaken us before they came for the women." Running Wolf's grip on the reins tightened until his knuckles whitened. "This medicine man has much to answer for. He is called Black Raven," Old Crow supplied. "I have encountered him at peace councils in the past. His power is considerable, but twisted by fear and ambition." By nightfall, they had covered impressive ground, but the need to rest their horse forced them to make camp in a sheltered ravine. As Nightstorm slept, exhaustion finally claiming her, Running Wolf and Old Crow spoke in hushed tones by their small, carefully concealed fire. "The child she carries," Running Wolf began hesitantly. "Could it truly be the one from this prophecy?" Old Crow's ancient eyes reflected the dancing flames. "I have had my own visions, War Chief. I saw your son standing on a great mountain with eagles circling above him and many tribal banners fluttering in the wind below. Whether he is the child of the Crow prophecy, I cannot say, but he will be important to our people's future." Running Wolf stared into the fire, contemplating this revelation. "Then we must ensure he lives to be born, and that Nightstorm survives to raise him," Old Crow added meaningfully. "She is as important to this story as the child." The following morning brought new challenges as they discovered signs that they were being followed. The lone Crow warrior who had escaped had indeed brought reinforcements, at least 6 riders. judging by the tracks Running Wolf found. "They are gaining on us," he told Nightstorm and Old Crow grimly. "We cannot outrun them with 3 riders on 1 horse." Nightstorm understood immediately what he was suggesting. "You will not stay behind to face them alone." "I am War Chief of the Blackfeet," Running Wolf replied, his decision already made. "My duty is to protect my people, especially my wife and unborn child." Old Crow raised a gnarled hand. "There is another way. The sacred caves lie less than half a day's journey north of here. We can seek sanctuary there." Running Wolf frowned. "The spirit caves? Those have been abandoned for generations." "Not abandoned," Old Crow corrected. "Reserved for times of greatest need. The entrance is hidden, and the Crow fear the spirits said to dwell there. They will not follow us inside." It was a desperate plan, but with few alternatives, they turned northward toward the ancient sacred site. By midday, they reached the base of a rugged cliff face where Old Crow directed them to a seemingly impenetrable wall of vegetation. "The entrance lies behind these vines," the medicine man explained, dismounting stiffly. "Our ancestors disguised it well." Running Wolf helped Nightstorm from the horse, then parted the thick curtain of vines to reveal a narrow opening in the rock face. Cool air flowed from the darkness beyond. "I will go first," Old Crow said, taking a branch from their supplies and wrapping it with dried grasses to create a torch. "The path is treacherous for those who do not know the way." They entered the cave single file, Old Crow leading with his flickering torch, Nightstorm in the middle, and Running Wolf bringing up the rear after concealing their horse some distance away. The passage twisted downward, occasionally so narrow they had to turn sideways to continue, before suddenly opening into a vast underground chamber. What they saw inside stole their breath away. The walls were covered with ancient paintings, buffalo hunts, great battles, star patterns, and ceremonial scenes dating back countless generations. At the center of the chamber, a small spring bubbled up from the earth, its water collecting in a clear pool before disappearing again into some unseen underground channel. "The birth cave," Old Crow said reverently, "where the most important children of the tribe were once born in times of danger or special significance." Nightstorm moved toward the pool as if drawn by an invisible force. "I know this place," she whispered. "I have seen it in my dreams." Old Crow nodded, unsurprised. "The spirits have been preparing you." Running Wolf remained near the entrance, listening for any sign of pursuit. "How long can we stay here?" "Until the child comes, if necessary," Old Crow replied. "There is water, and the caves extend far back into the mountain with multiple exits. I know them all." "My father and the tribe must be warned," Running Wolf insisted. "Yes," Old Crow agreed, "but not by you. Your place is here, protecting your wife and unborn son." The medicine man straightened his bent frame with visible effort. "I will go to the summer camp. I can travel by hidden paths the Crow do not know." Nightstorm turned from her contemplation of the pool. "It's too dangerous for you alone, Old Crow." The elderly healer smiled. "I have walked this land for 70 summers, child. The spirits will guide my steps one more time." After sharing their remaining supplies and providing Old Crow with detailed instructions on where to find the summer camp, Running Wolf watched the medicine man depart through a different passage than the one they had entered by. Alone with Nightstorm in the sacred cave, Running Wolf finally allowed himself to truly look at his wife, to see the strength and determination in her eyes despite the ordeal she had endured. "I thought I had lost you," he admitted, his voice low as he gathered her into his arms. "It would take more than a few Crow warriors to separate me from you," she replied, leaning into his embrace. "Or from our people." For 3 days they remained in the cave, venturing out only briefly to check for signs of their pursuers, and to move their horse to better grazing. On the 4th day, as Running Wolf returned from such an excursion, he found Nightstorm standing at the cave entrance, looking eastward with an expression of concentration. "What is it?" he asked, instantly alert for danger. "Listen," she said simply. At first he heard nothing unusual, just the wind in the trees and distant bird calls. Then it came to him, the rhythmic pounding of a Blackfeet war drum, carried on the breeze from far away. "My father," Running Wolf breathed, recognition dawning. "He sends the signal that it is safe to return." Nightstorm smiled, placing her hand over her belly. Old Crow reached them, and likely told them everything, Running Wolf added, a matching smile spreading across his face. Come, it's time to rejoin our people. As they rode eastward toward the summer camp, the steady drumbeat grew stronger, guiding them home. Cresting a final hill, they beheld a welcome sight. The Blackfeet summer camp spread across a lush valley, smoke rising from numerous cooking fires, teepees arranged in the traditional circle. And at the edge of the camp, waiting to greet them, stood Chief Gray Bear alongside Old Crow, flanked by a formation of Blackfeet warriors in full ceremonial dress. They honor your return, Nightstorm observed as they approached. They honor us both, Running Wolf corrected. The warrior and his warrior wife, carrying the future of our people. As they rode into camp amidst cheers and drumbeats, Running Wolf knew that challenges still lay ahead. The Crow would not abandon their pursuit easily, and the prophecy, whether about his son or another child, had set events in motion that would shape the destiny of the Blackfeet for generations to come. But for this moment, surrounded by their tribe, with Nightstorm safe beside him and their child growing strong within her, Running Wolf allowed himself to feel something that had been absent since he first discovered the abandoned camp: hope. Chief Gray Bear stepped forward as they dismounted, placing one hand on his son's shoulder and the other gently on Nightstorm's belly. The spirits have blessed us, the old chief announced loudly enough for all to hear. My son and his brave wife have returned, bringing with them the promise of tomorrow. Nightstorm met Running Wolf's gaze over the chief's shoulder, her eyes shining with the same fierce love and determination that had first drawn him to her years ago. We are home, she said simply. Yes, Running Wolf agreed, taking her hand in his as the tribe gathered around them in celebration. We are home.